who care. Welcome to our National Dr. Martin Luther King National Day of Service webinar with in partnership with Let's Be Safe. And I know our President Dima will give you a little bit more information next, but we wanted to start with our opening dua, as we always start every meeting and every event that we have. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful, I'm pleased to welcome you to our informational webinar in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King's National Day of Service. I start this beautiful gathering with reciting a verse from our Holy Quran that says, "Unto every one of you, we have given a different law and way of life. And if God had so willed, he would have made you all one single community." Chapter 48, verse 116. This means that our differences are part of his divine plan. This diversity is human unity, which is explained in this amazing verse. We, as 200 Muslim women who care, have applied this verse above to our lives by working together with all people to serve the community. We thank Allah, God, for every seat that has been filled here today. Thank you for allowing us to come together as Muslim women to uplift our shared community. We are grateful to you for choosing us from hundreds of women to serve our neighbors across Tampa Bay. For each mind and heart that fills the presence of this room, we thank you, God. Only you truly know what we are setting out to accomplish today. Only you, Allah, God, can see in perfect detail the end of every beginning. Your righteousness transcends all of our efforts and understanding. Forgive us for our pride and strengthen our confidence in who you have made us to be. Set us free from comparison in order to work together efficiently as one community. Ameen.
Ameen. Thank you, Dr. Manal. Good evening, everybody. The commemoration of the Martin Luther King Day of Service is a call to act on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy of social justice and equity. This day marks our opportunity to recommit as citizens by volunteering in service to others. Through those efforts, we can strengthen ties to our communities and one another while we address critical issues that impact everybody. We look forward to presenting this critical information to you so that you may take swift action to protect our most vulnerable populations, our children, on this Martin Luther King Day. Through this service, we hope to build more equitable and just communities. My name is Dima Abu Alaim, and I am the president of 200 Muslim Women Who Care. We are together in purpose, together in community, and together in change. 200 Muslim Women Who Care collectively supports Tampa Bay nonprofits in building safer, healthier, and stronger communities for everyone. Our organization is a growing group of diverse women with a common purpose to help others. Through collective giving, we create opportunities for member philanthropy, educational outreach, and civic engagement to have a positive and profound impact on our shared communities. Our organization recently awarded an $8,000 grant to Let's Be Safe in order to spread awareness to 3 local private schools in the Tampa Bay community. We hope that by sharing this information to children, we can protect them from harm. We would like to introduce the creator of Let's Be Safe, Brenda Zafria. Brenda Zafria, an author, educator, and child safety expert who has worked for nearly 30 years to help prevent the sexual abuse and abduction of children. She has helped to pass child safety legislation on a state and a national level and is the creator of the Let's Be Safe program, a non-fearful, research-based approach to help protect children while also promoting literacy skills, all at the same time. You will have the opportunity at the end of the program to ask questions directly to Brenda via chat, or you may unmute yourself when we get to the Q&A portion. But first, let's welcome Brenda.
Thank you, Dima. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this important information to help your listeners and everyone who's online here. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much for participating and joining with us. All right, we can just go ahead and get started with the questions. So how prevalent is child sexual abuse, and at what age can parents start teaching their children how to be safe?
Well, it is pretty prevalent, and people don't really realize, how far-reaching it is in the communities that it's touching. 1 in 10 children in the United States will be sexually abused at least once before they typically graduate high school, before they're 18 years old. Every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted, and every 9 minutes, that victim is a child. And this year and every year, there will be 400,000 babies will be born that will become victims of child sexual assault. So it's a far-reaching problem. The good news is that for the most part, it's a preventable crime. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you information on how we can prevent this from happening to our children. Let's see, you also asked me at what age we can start teaching children some safety tips and how to be safe. That's really important because we can start that as young as 3 years old. Simple things like teaching a child the proper names for their body parts is a huge, a really effective safety tip that doesn't need to be scary or anything like that. Just like we teach them the names of, head, nose, heart, etc., arms, legs, we need to be teaching them breasts, vagina, penis, buttocks, or bottom. And, the reason for this is that it can be done without scaring kids, right? We just make it a natural part of parenting. And I do realize using those terms very often feels uncomfortable. We usually come up with cute little names. But I will tell you, when we teach children the proper names for those body parts, if a predator, sexual offender, or somebody is looking to touch that child or groom that child for their own sexual benefit, the minute they realize that the child knows the proper names for those particular body parts, they're not going to mess with that child because it shows a level of training, right? Awareness in the family that they're not going to get very far with this child, especially a child who just uses the proper body terms at a very young age. So that's one thing we can start doing with children as young as 3 years old when you start teaching them the names of their different body parts. Another thing is that we teach children very young age, but it doesn't have to be scary at all, that where their bathing suit covers them, no one should be touching them there and making them feel uncomfortable. So we very often would say with little girls, your bathing suit covers you here and then here and across the back. And no one should touch you, make you feel uncomfortable. Same thing with boys, where their bathing suit covers them. So, and then also, of course, make sure they know that there's 3 times when it's okay to get help with their private parts: when they're hurt, when they're dirty, and when they're sick. And these are just very basic things that can be done at a very young age to really start protecting children.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
It shows that the communication side, the level of communication for a child that knows those words, that language, it make sense that it would scare somebody off. Are some children more vulnerable to being sexually abused?
There are some instances where kids are more likely to be sexually abused because it's basically easier for the predators to do so. And when I share some of these with you, don't make the mistake of thinking that, well, my child doesn't fall into this bucket, so I don't have to worry about this. Because the reality is all children are at risk across all socioeconomic, income levels, religious backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. But, the U.S. Justice Department does report that people aged 12 years old and up with intellectual disabilities are in fact sexually abused at 7 times the rate of people without intellectual disabilities. And that statistic does not include those that are living in institutions where research shows that they are even more vulnerable. It does not include those living in group homes. So these crimes against the people with disabilities actually go unrecognized, unprosecuted, and unpunished. So even with that statistic, it's way underreported. And the reason that, it goes unreported and unpunished for the most part is that they're very hard to prosecute. Very often, those with disabilities are taught to obey and be very obedient, which we teach them that to keep them safe from things like the hot stove and electrical outlets or getting hit by a car. So we just automatically, and we do that with young children as well, right? Here's the rule, you do this, you do that. And so they grow up being very obedient. They also have trouble communicating, articulating, and very often they don't realize that what's happening to them is even wrong. So there's a whole lot of reasons why this is a very vulnerable community that it's very important that we educate both their caregivers. I mean, they have a lot of caregivers coming in and out of their life, right? So there's a lot of transition of people in and out. It's very hard and complicated to protect that demographic. Another demographic that's also vulnerable and at great risk are children growing up in single parent homes, and especially where they're not living with both biological parents. So, these are two areas where we really need to pay attention and try to get the education out into those demographics. But like I said, don't make the mistake of thinking, well, if my child's not in one of those two areas, because all children across all neighborhoods, income levels, cultural background are at risk.
Okay. What are some of the common myths about sexual predators that parents should be aware of?
Well, probably the most common myth and the one that is the most dangerous for children is the belief that these things happen at the hands of strangers, when in fact, over 90% of sexual abuse of children happens at the hands of someone they know, very often trust. So that is a myth that I work very hard on trying to dispel and educate parents on that, and grandparents and caregivers, etc. There's also a myth among people. They think that men are the only ones that commit sexual crimes against children. And while they represent the majority of predators and offenders, about 20% of abuse does, especially of young children, does come at the hands of women. Many people also believe that gay men abuse children more than heterosexual men, and there is no data to support that either. They are no greater risk than heterosexual men. So that's another myth that's out there. And especially, people also think that it doesn't happen in good communities. There's so many people that just think they live in nicer, more affluent communities, that this doesn't happen there. So these are just some of the myths that we need to dispel and, realize that they're just not true.
Thank you.
There's also, there is no single profile of the type of person who would molest a child. So that's what makes it really hard as well to, really get people to understand that all children should know this prevention education starting as a young age, because we can't say, oh, it's this kind of person who looks this way or comes from this background or only has this certain educational level. Like, there is just no one profile, and that makes it difficult. So.
Yes. One thing this reminds me of is that in your book, I remember you teaching us that the caricatures or the graphics inside your book are purposely designed to kind of be blurry and not that specific, because kids, if you make something very specific, they'll kind of draw and assume like that's the person I need to look out for. That's the person I should be afraid of. And I remember you teaching us that you make it very general, very plain faces, so that kids don't associate a specific face or a specific skin color or anything like that with these images, because like you said, there is no distinct characteristic of a predator. So
yeah, exactly. And so you're right. When I was creating a tool and a resource for parents to use, it was very important to me to make sure that children saw in the illustrations the behavior that could be a warning, the tricks and the rules and the tricks that predators use, I wanted them to see that these words and these actions come from people, not animals. And even though I have a bee character woven through the book, the purpose of the bee was to keep the flow going and just praise the reader. But I didn't want kids to have the characters teaching the rules and seeing the behavior coming from animals and things, because these things don't happen to animals, from animals, or any kind of character that would be, not a human. And exactly what you said, I also wanted the facial features for them to know that it's an adult or a child, multicultural, but not where they could actually assign those features to someone they know, for that exact reason. So yeah, there's a lot of research behind the book in a lot of different ways. So thank you.
No problem. We'll talk more about that at the very end. But why are some children sexually abused for a long time before anyone finds out about it?
Sexual abuse goes on for a very long time. I mean, you can look at, whether it's the Boy Scouts, in the Catholic Church, this abuse has gone on for years and years with thousands of children. And you wonder why. Well, first of all, they're very often threatened that if you tell, we'll kill your dog, we'll kill your parents. They're threatened in so many different ways. So they're scared to come forward. Secrecy is the main reason that abuse occurs over a long period of time. Without the secrecy, without keeping a secret, it will get out. So the victims are under great pressure to keep it a secret, not just from threats, but they're also told that no one will believe them. So what's a child to do if they haven't already heard from a young age from their parents that if you ever need to tell me something, I will always believe you and I will always back you up? Without hearing those words, a child will believe the predator, that they will not be believed. In a lot of cultures, it would be just, they don't talk about this topic, right? It's very closed and we don't discuss it. And so, children are afraid that they will be shamed, embarrassed, they have humiliation, because they've already learned through their culture that we don't discuss this. Now, if we don't discuss it and it happens to me, I really can't talk about it because it's not up for discussion, So, and then, in the case of boys, boys disclose at far lesser rates than girls. And very often because, they have a physical reaction when they're touched, and it feels good. And over time, they start to believe that because of that, and it felt good, that they are at fault for it happening and that they okayed it, and so they're just so full of shame to come forward. So this is where at a very young age, children need to be taught, that if anyone touches them, makes them feel uncomfortable, that you will believe them, you will back them up, and you will help them. And that should help counterbalance a lot of what the predators are telling them over and over and over.
Great information. Thank you. How can we help keep our children safe from being abducted? I know that Florida has a very high, alarming human sex trafficking rate, but what do you think about tips for that?
Yeah, actually, well, we all agree that one child abduction is too many. So we'll start at that premise. The reality is that stranger abductions are very rare, just outright stranger abductions. Most abductions are, well, there's a high number of missing children, and most of them are like runaways and things like that. But back to the abducted children, most children who are abducted, in spite of the news headlines and high profile cases that we hear about over and over on the loop, most are taken by family members, still contested custody issues and things like that. But back to sex trafficking, which is very high in the state of Florida. So a lot of children who fall into that sex trafficking pattern have already been sexually abused. And then they may run away and end up on a street corner at a bus stop, and the predators are all there. And so we need to prevent the abuse from the first part. Now we take the other kids who perhaps fall prey to online predators, et cetera, and then end up in the whole sex trafficking issue. One of the things that would really prevent that is knowing that they should never have conversations with people they don't know. You know, a lot of abductors who abduct children and try to get them to go with them, they don't have to use force. They don't have to take the kid kicking and screaming. Basically, dialogue, discussing, talking to them, gets them to kind of go with them. And so the number one thing we can do is say, you don't have conversations with people you don't know, especially out in public. That prevents that from even happening. I will tell you, before I even got involved in this whole area of my life, when I was 13, I went to a big mall from New Jersey and went with my girlfriend, and we were just shopping for the day. And a very well-dressed man and woman, and this is a long time ago, came up to us with a clipboard, and they were saying they were looking for models for 17 magazine. They were looking for blonde girls, etc. Now my girlfriend was a brunette, so she said, "Bren, I'm gonna go shop and I'll catch up with you in a while, whatever." Now think about it. You know, you think about people getting discovered. You think about making a lot of money. You think about your big break, right? I stood there and I listened to them. Boy, did I want to go out into the parking lot to have my picture taken. They had the van there, the lights, and for 30 minutes, they were working on me. And there was just something in my gut that said I shouldn't go. But back then, the only child safety advice I ever got growing up was I wasn't allowed to take candy from strangers. I wasn't allowed to hitchhike or take a ride from hitchhiking. And that was it. So it was just my gut that said, don't go. But 30 minutes is a long time to try to convince someone. And I was almost there. And at the last minute, I said, well, let me have your business card and I will call you when I get home. And when I got home and called, there was no working number on that business card. And I look back now and I'm like, holy smokes, I really dodged a bullet with that. So, this comes back to the point I said, they didn't have to drag me out. I was this close to going. And so, cutting the conversation, not having a dialogue stops that right there.
Yeah. I know that your Let's Be Safe program does not teach like typical stranger danger, but can you explain why?
Yeah. So actually one of my biggest goals in life is to undo the whole stranger danger way of trying to keep children safe. I mean, when it comes to being abducted, yes, you don't want to have a conversation with strangers, but most people teach that thinking that it's going to protect children from sexual abuse, and it absolutely does not. And the whole stranger danger mentality came about like in the 50s or 60s, around there, when we had some high profile abductions and we didn't have the research to show that it isn't strangers who are sexually abusing our children. Now we have the research all these years later, and we really have to stop teaching children to be afraid of every person they don't know, because over 90% of the harm, as I said before, sexual abuse, is not going to come from a stranger. Also, most strangers are good and kind and would not hurt our children. So what we're doing is we're raising kids with a heightened sense of fear of everybody out there. And that actually makes them less safe, because when they go out into the community, they go out to malls and parks, if they're afraid of every adult out there and thinks every adult around them could harm them, it takes away their ability to discern real harm, right? How do they know real harm when they think everything is harmful? Secondly, who do they go to for help when they need it, if they were to need it? So the better way would be to teach children how to recognize strangeness strange behavior in anyone, not strangers. And that strange behavior is the things that I cover in my book. Things like teaching a child that they don't keep secrets with adults. They don't keep secrets from their parents. That's strange behavior because that's one of the first grooming steps that could lead to the grooming process where a child becomes sexually abused over a long period of time, right? We teach children that it's strange behavior for someone to be touching them on their private parts and under their clothing and making them feel uncomfortable. It's strange behavior for an adult to ask a child for directions. And this one's a really good safety tip because kids love to be helpful, right? Then they like to help people and show how smart they are. So if they're walking to school or walking home from school and someone pulls up and says, hey, can you tell me where the post office is? Children should be instructed to run away, get away, don't listen, don't talk, just ignore them and get away, because that starts the dialogue. I can't hear you. They step closer to the car. You know what I mean? So we should teach children that, you don't help adults with directions. You don't help other people find a lost puppy or a kitten. These are all should be taught as strange behavior. So we're looking to teach strangeness, not strangers. And then also, teaching children who safe strangers are. And most often we teach them a police officer is a safe stranger. You can always go to them for help. However, how many times is a police officer really around when you need one, right then and there, right? They're not around in all instances where children are. We teach them a fireman or a lifeguard. Well, that's great. But a more effective one would be teaching them to look for another lady with a child. And if they're ever in harm's way, if there's not a police officer, etc., another woman with a child is considered a very safe stranger. And of course, the clerk at stores at the checkout counter. And it's really good to take your children, especially young kids, and practice this. I did it with my own boys when they were very young. I took them to that same big mall. And I said, if we get lost or separated, who are some safe strangers? And I had them point them out. Point to another lady pushing a baby in a stroller. That's someone you could go up to. Find the person behind the checkout counter and find one for me, And when you practice it and the kids have the confidence, then, they know what to do and they feel more empowered out in the world.
Excellent, excellent. I love the fact strange behavior, not stranger danger. And just to kind of piggyback off of what we were speaking of earlier with the human sex trafficking rate, even in that scenario, it's always people that the girls are in communication with. They befriend them, they groom them, they talk to them before they actually take them off into a, different scenario. So it is always definitely somebody that most of, more than likely somebody that you're in communication with and these kids are talking to. So what can we do to help our kids keep safe from predators on the internet?
Yeah, so, the internet is like a pedophile's playground, right? They have access to kids, and it's just very scary. And, we're not going to get away from technology because there's just too much that's good about it that can help our kids in life and education, etc. One of the most important things is make sure your children know that who they think they're talking to may not be another 8-year-old or a teenager or a cute teenage boy who you may think you're talking to, that, they really don't know unless they've met the person, and that never should happen unless it's with you, with your knowledge in a public place. But they really have to understand the concept of who could be behind that screen. The next thing that would help keep them safe is be sure you know their screen name. Young girls, young boys might come up with some cute, sexy name that they think is just fun and flirty, but their screen name could attract a certain type of person that they may not be aware of. Okay. And I remember there was this very profile case that I had read about where a teenage girl, and I forget the name that she used at this point, but it was something sexy shorts or short. It was something like that. And it wasn't too bad, but it was just on the edge. And she attracted the wrong kind of person who lured her, and it did not end well. And kids may not realize that. So know their screen name, make sure it's not even close to anything that would attract a predator. The other thing is you should have access that they go on. Know what apps they're on, just like you know the friends that they visit, the homes that they go to. Know what apps that they're on, where they're going. And I would also have parental controls. For instance, that there's certain hours when they're allowed to be online and in different, using different social media apps. Should your child be on late at night? To me, that could be a really red flag, right? Who's contacting a young child at 11 o'clock at night or midnight, right? So perhaps having some parental controls around the hours when they're allowed to be on the internet or social media apps and things like that. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, they also should know and make it very clear that they shouldn't share personal information with people they don't know. And they may not understand that concept, like personal information. Well, yeah, it's easy to say your name, your address, but simple things like, well, obviously, like where you go to school, you wouldn't want that. They might start talking about that they love sports and what team they're on. Well, now the predator knows that they're on this team and they kind of live in this part of town. They might start showing up in the bleachers to watch them. Like it's things like this that's considered personal information. Also, where your parents were. Well, that might seem innocent enough, but now they know whether or not the child is home alone after certain hours. Like it just snowballs. And so you really have to have these conversations with your children as to what they're sharing with who. And you really need to know who these people are that they're conversing with on a regular basis. And while there can be some very good, innocent, and rewarding relationships with people you meet online, they should never, ever, 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 ever agree to meet with these people without your knowledge, without your permission, without you being there, and in a public place. So those are some probably the most important tips that can just start the foundation for safety. And it all goes back again to not having conversations with people you don't know. That protects them on the streets, at the malls, and online.
Excellent advice. And now as we're talking more towards like the older kids, like as our children become teens and want more freedom to go places without their parents, how can we give them more freedom without scaring them about the dangers that we're concerned about?
Yeah, well, so one of the most effective ways to help keep kids safe is, you want to give them freedom to go to the mall, right? Ride their bikes around the community, perhaps. Doing it with a buddy would be my first rule. You go with a friend, right? You don't go by yourself. You have a friend with you. Go to the mall, you go together. When you go to the restrooms, you go together. So that's one thing we can give them. And also, if you know your child understands that people could try to lure them, and they understand that they shouldn't be having conversations with people they don't know, do you see how that protects them from so much harm? The minute they nip that conversation in the bud, then that predator doesn't have an opportunity to lure them anywhere, in the mall, in a parking lot, anywhere, because you know that they understand that. The other thing is they should also know that they shouldn't be hanging out in parking lots. For instance, if you go to the mall, you take your teenage kids and you give them some freedom. You and your friend can go off this way, mom's going to go this way, and we're going to meet back in an hour or two. So that's a nice little baby step to do it. You're at the mall, but you're not with them, but they're not totally on their own. Well, they also should be taught that, if they lose you at a big public place or anywhere, that they should not go in the parking lot to the car, because eventually you'll show up at the car. Nope. They should be taught that they should find a place that you've already agreed upon ahead of time. If we get separated, we will meet at the shoe store, or we'll meet at the food court. Find a place, have a safety plan before you need it. And so they know that if we get lost, separated, or we can't find each other, whatever, we're going to meet back here. And children should stay put, knowing that you will come find them. And they should know that you'll never stop looking for them until you do find them. And that once again, that if they're waiting for you, or you're trying to reconnect, they stay put and they should not go out into the parking lot. I mean, that's a dangerous spot for them to be hanging out, waiting, etc. So you take it baby steps and you give them a little leeway and you make sure they know the rules and then practice it. Another thing that you can do to get both your confidence up and their skill level and confidence as well is I've always used drive time as safety time. When are you going to talk about this? How are you going to fit it in? And kids have to hear the message more than once. Well, when you're in the car running all these errands back and forth, carting them all over, I've always used drive time as safety time, and play what if things. What if once I drop you off here, I'm not here at the time we agreed? What if I get delayed or have a breakdown in the car and I'm supposed to pick you up at school or after soccer practice? What will we do? Well, we'll have a code word. And you set that up ahead of time where you come up with 1 or 2 words. That is your family code word. It's not something in pop culture, not something someone could figure out. And when you have to send someone else to pick up your child, they should say, hey, your mom sent me to get you. She broke down, whatever. And the child should say, what's my code? Because you gave that code to the person who's coming to help you. If they don't know it, they don't go with them. And you do this with family members, with everybody, because you don't want children to have to figure out, well, does this person need a code or this one doesn't? So just do it across the board, because stuff happens. We do have accidents. We do get tied up at the doctor's office. And, we don't want our child panicking, thinking, oh, mom's 10 minutes late, 5 minutes late. What do I do? Should I go with somebody else? And you don't want to be stressed. You want to know that your child knows what to do, to wait for you or to go with who you've given permission to pick your child up. So there's things like that we can do to just lay a very strong foundation of common sense safety rules.
I love that. And even in this day and age, I know everyone's like, oh, my kid has a phone, so I'll call them. But there's so many instances where the Wi-Fi doesn't work or their phone battery dies. I can't tell you how many times my phone battery has died. And then if we don't have a game plan ahead of time to say, hey, regardless of whether you can call me or not, at this particular time, let's meet here. So I love that idea, not letting them in the parking lot. So, because batteries die.
Yeah, well, the other thing too, like with the cell phone thing, I'd really like our kids not to be, and us to be with them every 5 minutes on the phone. They are so much safer when they have the confidence and the knowledge to know what to do in different circumstances. It makes them walk taller. It makes them walk less vulnerable. A child who's in control knows what to do, has the confidence that they can be safe in our world, walks with a different attitude than a child who's fearful. And that sends a message to those looking around, right?
Yeah.
Whether that child is more vulnerable to being approached.
Yeah. Definitely. Great tips. Are there warning signs that could help us know ahead of time whether or not our child could be in danger?
Oh, yes, there are. And it's interesting that, once parents are educated and know these warnings to look for, they say, oh, you know what? You're right. That did happen. Now that you mention it. And so what those warning signs are, and they will be coming once again from someone within the child's immediate family and friends and your circle, right? When it comes to sexual abuse. So these warning signs are going to be happening from someone the child knows. And they are things like showing more interest in your child than you have, right? They show preference. They give special gifts. Oh, this is for you. You're my special niece or nephew, right? Don't tell your parents because I don't have one for your brothers and sisters. They may give them $1. They may give them a little gift. To a child, this seems harmless and they feel special. And that's could be part of the grooming process. What they do is they very often try to first get the trust of the child, and the way they do that, and it's part of the grooming process, is they show extreme interest in what the child's hobbies are, what they like to do, and what would they like, what's missing in their life, right? What toy would they, opportunity, maybe I've always wanted to go to a ball game. They will find out, connect with the child so the child trusts them and feels special, and then they'll find a way to fill that need. And sometimes it might be as innocent as, okay, so mom works 2 jobs or mom works late, so you can never go see this thing, or you can never go do this because it conflicts with the family's busy schedule. You know what? I'll take them there one night. That sounds great. But when it's these little things that add up, between gifts, special attention, filling a need, and helping, especially like single parents, you know, they would be so grateful for someone to babysit and not have to pay a babysitter for some night. I'll watch them so you can go out with your girlfriends for the night. You deserve it. You need it. Different things like this are, and not to say that if someone offers it, it's a warning sign, but when it's repetitive, you know, you start putting the flags together, and it's something to pay attention to.
All right, thank you. I'll have one more question and then we'll be able to open it for Q&A just to give everybody a sense of our time frame here. And the last question I have is, what can youth serving organizations do to help protect the children in their care?
Okay, yeah. So, you know, whether you're a church, a synagogue, a youth group, a boys and girls club, you know, any organization that gets together with the purpose of serving kids, the very first thing you should always do is do background checks on your staff and any volunteers that you have working with children on a regular basis. If it's a one-time, they're going to show up once, you know, you're not probably going to go through a whole background check, but typically when you serve youth and you have volunteers and staff members that are working on a regular basis with these kids, where they have the opportunity to build a relationship and have access to kids, you definitely want to do background checks. You want to do personal reference checks, not just the official background, but call people who know them, who have worked with them and can vouch for, you know, vouch for them. You should provide child sexual abuse prevention training for all staff and volunteers on a regular basis. And what this does is it lets the volunteers and the staff know that if you're working with us, you're volunteering with us for any other reason other than the best interest of these children, we have all been trained. We are looking for the behaviors that may, you know, give you access to kids. And this isn't the place where you would get away with this, because we're all on board with it. And when everyone is on board, everyone's eyes are looking around and paying attention to the behavior. But if the staff hasn't been trained on what to look for and what is expected, then you've got gaps, right? The other thing is, part of that, you know, training also involves having a code of conduct, organization-wide policies in place, written, reviewed, and everyone knows them and understands them. And it lays out specifically what behaviors and actions are allowed if you're involved with us. Things like, we do not allow any one-on-one situations where one adult with one child. Doesn't happen. We do not have that happening in all classrooms, all rooms have the doors open. We do not have doors closed when we have a one-on-one situation with a child. We do not allow our volunteers to drive our kids anywhere in their own personal cars unless we have certain criteria, such as the parents know it's happening. There's another child in the car, not just 2, perhaps there's 2 adults. So you basically have an entire set of code of conduct of what's expected. And like I said, that really ups the safety level, because the other way, because they know. And lastly, what it does is if someone sees something and they know that the other staff are on the same page, and if I report what I'm seeing, I will be backed up. I'm not going to report something to administration and get in trouble or be accused of anything, because we're all on the same page. We've all agreed that we're going to look out for things. And I may be wrong, but at least, I'm bringing it up and I know I'll be supported, because the end goal is to keep our kids safe.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And, with that, for those of you who are joining in with us in the local Tampa Bay area, specifically for the 3 Islamic schools, when we bring this presentation to the children in the schools, we hope to kind of create that conversation to the administrators, to the various organizations in our community, to create policies for our children to protect them and to have a better system in place so that it would never happen to any of our children. And if any of you are interested, we are going to open up the floor for Q&A, but if you don't feel comfortable with asking your question via the chat or unmuting yourself to ask, we want you to know that you are free to email Brenda directly your question. Maybe later on something comes up to your mind and you realize you have a specific question for her. You can email Brenda at brenda@letsbesafe.com. And I know Neda, who is our lovely assistant, is going to be putting her email in the chat. And just be cognizant, it's Brenda, BRENDA, at just the letter B, safe.com. And if you didn't catch that, you can always go to Brenda's website. This is the book that we will be presenting to the 3 Islamic schools in the near future. But right now, what we'll do is we'll open the floor for questions. If anybody has a question, please message it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and our lovely board member, Neza, will unmute you so that you can ask your question directly to Brenda. I know that you covered great answer. So I don't know if anybody has extra questions, but we'll give everybody a moment.
Sometimes, after the fact, when you think about it, or even down the road, you could be out with your kids or you have a situation and you're like, oh, I wonder how I should handle this, or I wonder if it's safe. Feel free to contact me anytime down the road, when need arises.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, I think in our communities, Brenda, it's this conversation, in generally across all communities, it's probably a taboo topic or something difficult to approach. And I think especially in our community that tends to be, I guess, a little bit more conservative about dating and things like that. So I guess, what are some tips that you could give for communities that maybe have difficulty in broaching these topics, how to kind of normalize it and in bringing it to our schools and bringing it up in our families and things like that?
Well, great question too. And the way to normalize it is actually to start talking about it. So until we actually start having any conversations on any level, it's not going to get to where it's where it needs to be. So even just bringing me in or someone in to start the conversation, even on a very basic level, starts opening up the dialogue. But I think if we approach it that this is a natural part of parenting, it needs to be woven into everything else that we teach our kids. So when we teach our children to look both ways before they cross the street, we don't say you have to look both ways, because if you don't, a semi is going to hit you, your brains are going to be on the road, your guts are going to, we don't do that. And so when we're trying to teach our children how to be safe from something that is so prevalent, we don't need to say, our family rule is you don't keep secrets with adults, because if you do, they could groom you to touch your private parts and you'll never get out of it and you won't know. Just plain and simple. We don't keep secrets with adults in our family. End of it. As they get older, teenagers, you want to share reasons why, and they will be actually, in the state of, actually across the country, but in the state of Florida, it's mandatory teaching in all grades K through 12, child prevention, health education, and it's done at a very basic level. So, just having the rules set out, and it's a natural parenting, just like we teach them to say their prayers, to brush their teeth. Well, now guess what? We don't keep secrets with adults. We don't help adults with directions. Adults should not ask children for help. They should ask other adults. We don't help someone find a lost puppy. You come home, get me, whatever, we can help them. Just simple things don't need to be scary. It's a very, should be a very non-fearful, natural part of parenting. And so between that approach, viewing it as what we need to teach kids in today's world, combined with starting the dialogue, that's how you can just like slowly introduce it. And I think really it comes down to fear, especially in very strong faith-based communities. And here's the sad thing, is that predators very often target our children, whether it's, Christian, Muslim, whatever, because we know that we teach our children to respect authority. We teach our children to obey the rules. And we also teach our children to look for the good in people, right? And to, be compassionate and helpful. And so these very traits that are so good can also be exploited. So.
So true. So true. But having that conversation is so important because yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not, I get it. It's not an easy conversation to start. It's so uncomfortable in the beginning, which is kind of which is exactly, to be honest, why I created the resource that I did in the 3 different versions, the one for secular schools, the one for families of faith, and then a bilingual for our Hispanic community. I lose sleep worrying about our Hispanic community and communities where English is not their first language, because the predators also know that for those families, they very often are not comfortable going to authority or dealing with authorities. They're not comfortable with the language or can't converse. And in the Hispanic community, they're threatened with deportation. So I, sadly, having taught in the public schools at Title I schools with high percentage of minority students, Hispanic and African-American, so many of my Hispanic students have dealt with this. And then you add the culture in the Hispanic community where they don't talk about it. And it's actually a lot of women assume that being abused, sexually abused, is what they just have to deal with as part of their culture. So it's, I'm on a mission for that demographic, that I lose sleep over that demographic.
Well, we hope to support you in your mission, and we are so happy that we did our small part today to bring this program, this information to our community, and maybe nationally. We have some people joining us that may have come across our flyer, and we welcome you. So thank you again, Brenda, for everything that you do. Again, if anybody else has any questions, they're free to email Brenda directly from brenda@letsbesafe.com. And thank you everybody to joining. We are going to, and as we traditionally do, Dr. Manal Ahsan is going to close us out with a prayer before we leave. And I hope you can just listen to that briefly, and then we can sign out. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brenda. So tonight we gained valuable knowledge on how to keep our children and in turn our community safe. By taking this step, we are one step closer to accomplishing our organization's vision of implementing positive outcomes in every neighborhood across Tampa Bay. Giving is not just about making a donation, it's about making a difference. And by being here tonight, you are making a big difference in people's lives. To quote our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, The best among you is those who bring the greatest benefits to many others. And this, ladies, is exactly what you have done tonight. So please join me in prayer. Dear God, please bless our organization and members and help us keep our intentions for your sake only. Bring our hearts together with our families, our friends, and our community. Dear God, keep all of us physically safe and guard our hearts and minds from pride and selfishness. Please keep us grounded in our work and grant us the ability to recognize, realize, and act on our responsibility to serve others. Dear God, please keep love at the forefront of our minds today and the guiding light for all we set out to accomplish and celebrate. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Manal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nada. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Manal and Nada, if you want to stay on for a minute. The direct message.
Almost there.
So-
Okay. I just yeah, let me do that. Thanks. Okay.
The 561
I
was my
long
mom.
to do that today. I'm sorry.
No, it's funny. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Look, as soon as Zanira's joining.
No, you did so great,
Yeah,
Marshall. That was perfect. Why is Zanira
Now-
joining? Yeah.
Manal saved the day with the question. I was going to tell her.
Yeah.
So
That
it was
was-
great.
Oh my gosh, no. And I think she was good, says her, and it was informative. It was lovely, mashallah.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Oh my gosh, the Uber is calling me.
Oh, good, good. Perfect timing.
I know. How did that work? Press one. Let's see. So funny.
Let's see. Oh, that's perfect timing, sis.
You did excellent, Nada. Thank you so much.
No, you were
And
wonderful.
now I
That was
gotta
so
give her
great.
major
It was
props.
seamless, mashallah. And we're getting so good at these. I'm like, gosh, we're not going to need to do them anymore.
I don't know what's going on with Uber. How funny. I was like,
I'm so
subhanAllah.
glad that was perfect.
But look, it's like, it doesn't do anything.
They should pick up. I don't know what else said. Oh, yeah, they just said they'll call
They may
again.
call you. Yeah, I mean, how good
Okay.
timing. But nobody's saying anything. Look, it's like,
Okay, yeah. No, they're
just
not.
hung up.
Yeah,
Hung up randomly.
I'm gonna say just keep prompting it until someone picks up because this happened to me before. It'll eventually connect, but that's weird.
Okay. Well,
Prompt again.
sorry
Sorry,
for
sis.
that.
Okay, well, alhamdulillah for
thank you
all
so
of this
much
going
for
so well.
everything.
No, thank
Yeah,
you. It was so
you did
great.
perfectly.
So proud. Always, mashallah. You're just so graceful and she was great. So it was good.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah,
We like,
alhamdulillah. Awesome.
okay.
Enjoy tonight. Get rest. Okay.
Now I'm gonna go take a shower. Okay. Like, thank you
Take
for
care.
your support and
Thank
please
you.
give
Always.
kisses to Manal for me
Yeah,
too,
we'll
man.
talk.
I
Okay,
like
absolutely.
amazing. It saved
you,
us with that
guys.
question right there at the end. I was like, perfect. That we can
And just like tying it in. She like wrote it down. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
good job. All right, sis, we love you.
Like,
Salam. Take care.
Good night.